Hi guys, welcome to your 8.3 notes. Today we are going to multiply binomials. By the end of the day, you will be able to multiply two binomials together. Also, you'll be able to multiply a binomial by a trinomial. Now that's a lot of fancy math words. Let's go and break them down real quick. So bi means two and nomial means number. So a binomial is an expression with two numbers. For example, 3x minus 7, that's a binomial. A binomial, again, is something with two numbers, and that makes a trinomial something with three numbers. That is, a trinomial is an expression with three terms, like 4x squared minus 8x plus 5. That's got 1, 2, 3 terms to it. It's a trinomial. Before we multiply, we're going to do a quick review of the distributive property. Now, how the distributive property works is if you start out with this guy multiplying into each of these two terms, you need to distribute him to both. So that's the same thing as 2x times 3x, but also 2x times negative 7. See how we took our 2x and we distributed him to multiply times 3x, but also times negative 7. 3x and negative 7. Then we simplify that out. 2x times 3x gives us 6x squared, and 2x times negative 7 gives us a negative 14x. If you would rather rewrite that as 6x squared minus 14x, that's totally fine. So that's our solution to part A. In part B, we're going to do the same thing. And this time we're taking our 4 and we're going to distribute him to both of our terms, 3x and also negative 7. So that will give us 4 times 3x plus 4 times negative 7. Some of you like to write, you would rather write like 4 times 3x minus 4 times 7. You'll end up seeing that that's going to be the same thing. So we'll get 12x minus 28. So that's a quick review of the distributive property. Now today, as we multiply two binomials together, we are actually going to use the distributive property, but this time we're going to use it twice. We're going to use it 2 times. So let's go ahead and do a couple quick examples. For our first one, since we have two binomials, here's our first binomial, our second binomial, we're going to use the distributive property first to distribute 2x to both of the terms, 3x minus 7, and then we'll use the distributive property again to distribute our 4 to 3x minus 7. So it's the same thing as 2x times 3x minus 7 plus 4 times 3x minus 7. Again, we took both members of our first binomial and we split them up so that we can distribute them both to both members of our second binomial. So let's go ahead and use the distributive property to expand that out. That will give us 6x squared minus 14x plus 12x minus 28. If these numbers sound familiar, it's because we just did them in our warm-up. We've got a 2x times 3x minus 7 and a 4 times 3x minus 7. 2x. How great was that? Okay. Now we're almost done. This is almost our solution, except we have two like terms that we can combine. We have two x terms here. We've got a negative 14x and a 12x. And negative 14x plus 12x comes out to a negative 2x. We'll bring the other two members down. That gives us 6x squared minus 2x minus 28. Go ahead and pause this video and go ahead and try to do part B using the steps in part A. Okay, let's go ahead and use the distributive property on this one. First, we are going to distribute our x to both members of our second binomial, and then we are going to distribute our negative 6. So here we go. That's the same thing as x times 4x plus 3 minus 6 times 4x plus 3. Again, we took both of these guys from our first binomial, we split them up, brought our x down here, brought our negative 6 over there, and now we're going to use the distributive property here and here. So that will give us 4x squared plus 3x minus 24x minus 18. Again, we have two like terms that we can combine. We have an x term of 3x and we have an x term of negative 24x. 3x minus 24x is negative 21x. Bringing our other two terms down, we've got 4x squared minus 21x minus 18. So we did it. We multiplied two binomials together. Good job. So there are two ways actually to multiply binomials together. You could use the distributive property, but if that gets a little complicated for you, there's a word that helps us remember how to do this, and it's called FOIL. To use the FOIL method is basically you're going to multiply four things together. The first thing that you're going to multiply together is the first term in each binomial, and then you'll multiply the outside terms of each binomial together. Then you'll multiply the inside terms together, and finally you'll multiply the last terms together. So here this FOIL stands for first, outside, inside, and last. So let's go ahead and look at our first example. We're going to multiply our first terms together. Our first terms are a times 4a. So first we're going to multiply a times 4a together. Then we're going to multiply our outside terms together. O in FOIL stands for outside. Our outside terms are a and negative 7. So we'll get a times negative 7. And then to that we will add our inside terms, which are negative 6 and 4a. So that's negative 6 times 4a. And then finally we've got our last terms. Our last terms in this case are negative 6 times negative 7. Let's go ahead and clean that up as best we can. A times 4a is 4a squared. A times negative 7 is negative 7a. Negative 6 times 4a is negative 24a. And finally, negative 6 times negative 7 gives us a positive 42. Again, we've got two a terms here that we can combine. So let's go ahead and combine those like terms. That will give us negative 31a. Bring our other two terms down. We have 4a squared minus 31a plus 42. Go ahead and follow that example and do part B. All right, let's go ahead and see if you did part B correctly. So following our FOIL method, first we're going to multiply our first terms together. That will give us 2b squared times 4b, and then outside we get 2b squared times negative 1. And then we'll add our inside product, 3 times 4b. And then finally, we'll add our last terms, 3 times negative 1. So all in all, that gives us 8b cubed minus 2b squared plus 12b minus 3. There are no like terms here, so we leave it as is. So we have seen two ways to multiply products together. We can either use the distributive property or we can use the FOIL method. Now the FOIL method is nice because it has this nice word and you can use colors and you can draw rainbows and that's very exciting. However, the FOIL method only works with two binomials. Only with two binomials. That is, if you have something that looks like a plus b times c plus d, then it will work. But if you have something longer, then we will go back to the distributive property. Yay! So let's go ahead and put the distributive property in practice, and then I'll set you free on your homework. So here we go. We're going to use the distributive property again. Now there are two ways to do this. We could take each term here and distribute them to these guys, but I think it's going to be shorter if we distribute these guys into our first term. So that means we're going to distribute a 2m to our first trinomial, and then we will distribute a -7 into our trinomial. So that will give us 3m squared plus m minus 5, that whole thing times 2m, and then we'll take our trinomial and we will multiply that by -7. So again, we're taking each term of our binomial and we are going to distribute it into, we're taking each term in our binomial and we will distribute it into our trinomial. So let's go ahead and do this. So 2m times 3m squared, so we have 3m squared times 2m plus m times 2m minus 5 times 2m. I'm quickly realizing I'm going to run out of room. So bear with me as I do this part kind of underneath it. And then we'll have 3m squared times 7 plus m times 7 minus 5. Oh, -7, -7, -7. Minus 5 times -7. So I took my first trinomial and I multiplied a 2m times every term. And then I took that trinomial again and I multiplied a -7 into every term. Now I'm going to simplify these guys out. So this will give us a 6m cubed plus 2m squared minus 10m plus, actually this will give a minus, minus 21m squared minus 7m plus 35. Now the way I happened to run out of room works out really nice because now I can combine like terms with my m squareds and with my m's. So if I add that all up together, that'll give me 6m cubed minus 19m squared minus 17m plus 35. Got it? Go ahead and pause the video and try part B. Alright, let's go ahead and try part B. So again, in part B, we are going to take each of our parts of our binomial and distribute them into our trinomial. Let's start out with our n, and then we'll distribute our 3. So that'll give us 2n squared minus 3n plus 1, and we'll distribute an n into all of those guys. And then we'll take our 2n squared minus 3n plus 1 and distribute a 3 into all of those guys. So we have 2n squared times n minus 3n times n plus 1 times n. We've got an n distributed to each of them. And then we've got a 2n squared times 3 minus 3n times 3 plus 1 times 3. Now let's simplify and combine like terms. That gives us 2n cubed minus 3n squared plus n plus 6n squared minus 9n plus 3. We have two sets of like terms here. We've got some n squareds to combine, and we also have some n's to combine, giving us 2n cubed and then negative 3n plus 6n gives us positive 3n squared. And then normal n minus 9n will give us a negative 8n. All that's left is our 3. And that's our final answer. So basically today, we just did the distributive property a bunch of times. We distributed to multiply trinomials with a binomial. We distributed to multiply two binomials together. And the FOIL method is just a fancy way to remember to distribute across. I hope you enjoy the rest of your homework multiplying using the distributive property.